So, recession. You're hearing that word everywhere, right? And yeah, it sounds pretty intimidating. We've seen them pop up time and time again throughout history. But why? What actually causes them? Well, in this explainer, we're going to break it all down.
Right, we see the headlines, we definitely feel it when things slow down. But what is the actual reason the economy slams on the brakes in the first place? That's the big question we're tackling. Okay, so to really get a handle on what a recession is, we've got to zoom out first. We need to get that 30,000-foot view of how the entire economy works. So the biggest, most important number for an economy is something called gross domestic product, or GDP. Now, the best way to wrap your head around it is to think of it like a giant receipt for the entire country. Seriously, it's the grand total of every single thing made and sold in a year. Every haircut, every coffee, every new phone, all added up.
And just look at this graph. This shows the U.S. economy going all the way back to 1948. Now you can see the overall trend is up, which is great, but look closer at those little dips. See them? Those are recessions. You've got ones triggered by an oil crisis in the 70s, another by runaway inflation in the 80s, the big financial crisis in 2008, and of course COVID. They're like a regular, repeating feature of our economy. So to figure out why, we need to zoom way, way in.
All right, so to really see how this all works, let's bring this huge, abstract idea right down to earth. Let's talk about something we all know, a neighborhood bakery.
Yeah, forget trillions of dollars and global markets for a second. Just imagine the entire economy is the size of your neighborhood. I know it sounds simple, but this little model is the key to understanding the whole shebang. So in a healthy, booming economy, the flow of money looks something like this. You walk into your local bakery and buy a fresh loaf of bread for, say, $3. Now that $3 doesn't just vanish into thin air. Nope. The bakery uses that money to pay its workers, to pay the landlord, and then what do? Well, those workers and the landlord take that new income and they go spend it at other local shops, and the cycle just keeps on going. Your spending literally becomes someone else's income. This creates more demand, so businesses start hiring more people to keep up, and the whole neighborhood's economy, its GDP, grows.
But what happens when something throws a wrench in the works? How does this amazing engine of growth suddenly slam into reverse? Well, that's where the domino effect comes in. And you know what? It can all start with something tiny. You go into the bakery, just like any other day, and you see that the price of your usual loaf of bread is now $4. The baker might say, sorry, the cost of flour went up, or whatever. But honestly, the reason doesn't really matter. What matters is how you react. And just like that, you start thinking a little differently. It's not just that the bread costs more. Maybe you also hear on the news that interest rates are going up. That makes putting money in your savings account seem like a smarter idea, and getting a loan way more expensive. You start hearing rumors about an economic downturn, and maybe you even see one of your neighbors get laid off. All of these little signals start piling up, and they make you cautious. You decide, you know what, I'm just going to hold on to my cash for a bit.
And this right here is the absolute key. Your seemingly small personal choice to skip that $4 loaf of bread, it isn't just about you. It's the very first domino to tip over in a much, much longer chain.
You can really see the massive shift in psychology here. Look at the difference. In the good times, everyone's feeling confident, right? People are spending. Businesses are hiring, banks are lending. It's a virtuous cycle. But during a downturn, that whole mindset flips. People start saving, businesses start laying people off, and getting a loan becomes really difficult. It's like a collective mood swing for the entire economy.
And here's how that chain reaction plays out in our little neighborhood. First, because you and a bunch of your neighbors stop buying as much bread, the bakery's sales tank. They can't afford their whole staff anymore, so they have to let a worker go. Now that newly unemployed baker has no income. So what happens? They stop buying coffee at the local cafe, they cut back at the grocery store. Suddenly, those businesses are losing money too. And the fear, it starts to spread. Now even more people start hoarding their cash just in case. And there it is, the total amount of money flowing around, the total value of stuff being made and sold in our little neighborhood economy, it's actually shrinking now. The neighborhood's GDP is going down. That, in a nutshell, is a recession.
Okay, so let's zoom back out to the real world. That super simple logic from our neighborhood bakery, it applies to the entire national, even global economy. And what it really shows us is that recessions aren't just about spreadsheets and numbers on a screen. They're about human nature,
They're about psychology.
So, this is probably the million-dollar question on your mind, right? With everything we've just talked about, are we in a recession right now? Well, this is where it gets tricky, because in the real world, the signals we get are often messy, confusing, and sometimes they even contradict each other.
Take a look at this. For example, not too long ago, the U.S. GDP, our big national receipt, it actually shrank for 2 quarters in a row. Now that's the classic textbook definition of a recession. But at the very same time, the unemployment rate was incredibly low, which is usually a sign of a really strong economy. And then, to make it even more confusing, GDP started to grow again, just a little bit. So, are we in one or not? Honestly, economists themselves can't even agree.
And that really brings us to the most important takeaway of all. Behind all the charts, all the data, all the fancy economic terms, what we're really dealing with here are people. Millions and millions of us making millions of little decisions every single day, often based on nothing more than how we feel about the future. Are we feeling confident, or are we feeling scared?
So look, while recessions are definitely painful, people lose their jobs, businesses have to close, it's tough, they aren't some kind of weird glitch in the system. They are a natural, normal, and cyclical part of the modern economy we've all built. You could almost think of them like economic seasons. Winter always comes, but spring always follows.
And that leaves us with one last big question to chew on. If these cycles of boom and bust are actually a built-in feature of our economy, not a bug, what does that mean for how we should plan for the future? Not just as a country, but for you and me as individuals.